within each slide, or you can do Q&A at the end.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Dan Bates, President and CEO, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and you are here for Coffee and Conversation. We're glad you could join us this morning. This morning, our guest speaker is Jim Bolen with the Emergency Management Association, and he's going to be talking about community and resiliency. And with the weather and some of the other things that have been happening lately, I think it's a really appropriate topic. So we are on Zoom. If you have questions, I'm sure Jim won't mind if you interrupt him and ask those questions. If you're on Facebook Live, type those questions in and Nancy will get them answered for you. So you know who I am, you know what the protocol is. Now we're going to find out who all of you are. Jason?
Yep. Hey, everyone. I'm Jason Michael Miller with the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. I'm just going to go down my screen. We've got Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Neill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
We've got Sherry.
Hi, Sherry Bailey with Batteries Plus.
Sandy.
Good morning, Sandy Kusnoff with Frank's Glass.
Annette.
Annette Landisman with Supports to Encourage Low-Income Families, Self.
Amy.
From Butler County Board of Developmental.
Am I the only Amy on this call? Hard to believe.
Oh,
Amy Miller with Ohio Means Jobs, Butler County.
thank you. Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Williams. I'm with the Alzheimer's Association.
Eric.
Hi, Eric Bolster, Health Commissioner at Butler County General Health District.
I have Amy Holland.
Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Sorry for interrupting the other Amy.
That's okay. We have Derek.
Morning, Derek Chancellor with Senator John Husted's office.
Good morning. Good morning. I think that we have everyone introduced. So, Jim, we're going to pass it on to you. You can start whenever you'd like, okay?
All right. Well, Jason, thank you very much. And thank you very much to Dan and everybody at the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak. I think, I think I'm blessed to have the opportunity to speak to several different groups. And this is a presentation that I've done in a while, but it's something that's been on my heart a lot here recently. And I think anytime that we get the opportunity as an emergency manager, anytime I get the opportunity to speak, I think I have a responsibility to speak about the importance of the whole community and how we all come together to make Butler County and Ohio a great place to live, a great place to work, a great place to spend recreational time as well. And so I do have a slide here, if it'll slide. There we go. So this is a little bit about my background. I won't go too much into this, but other than to say I've been here in Butler County for the past 10 years and have really enjoyed my time here in Butler County. I was born and raised in Butler County from Madison Township up north and west of Middletown, and spent a lot of time growing up there. For the past 10 years, I've actually been living in Kettering after I got married. My wife and I moved into her house in Kettering, but still looking to get back into the community just because we love Butler County so much. So I'm thankful for the opportunity today. And like Dan said, if you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to shout them out. If there's any issues with my audio, please let me know. So I want to start off by talking about this idea of the whole community. So the whole community is a kind of a FEMA-driven program that identifies our community is made up of a bunch of individual parts. But when we look at our community, we need to understand that our programs should fit every part of the community. And so, you look at the city of Hamilton, you look at Butler County, you have this collection of industry and business, you have these collection of citizens, you have this collection of government agencies, and when you put them all together, what comes out of that is this whole community. And so when we have natural disasters and man-made events, we want to focus on supporting all of these individual elements of our community. And when we look at this, it's important. It's important to know we're talking about the interconnections that exist within our community. And so we have industry, we have citizens, we have government. These various segments of our community are reliant upon the other segments in our community. So if you're a business, you want good, strong government that has good infrastructure, that has good monetary and fiscal policy. You want citizens who have the ability to be active in their communities, to come in and to spend money. But you also want other industry partners to be able to rely on your business and be able to rely on your work as a supplier or whatever it is that you provide to the community. You want other businesses to be able to rely upon you. And so these various segments of our community kind of exist in this interconnected dialogue between each other, where when one part of this group is strong, the entire component is stronger, and when one component of this is maybe weaker, the entire component is weaker as well. And so when we look at it, on its face, we see these interconnections. This is pretty standard. I don't think we're breaking new ground when we look at that. But when we dive even deeper into this, we start identifying that these various segments of our community are also interconnected within each other. And so we have our citizens. If we're looking at going back to that community block on the last slide, if we dove into this idea of what does community mean, we'd see a couple things, right? One, we'd see it's not some monolithic block. It's actually further elements in a relationship with each other. And so you have citizens that are in faith communities. You have community groups that citizens are a part of, and all of these elements are relied upon by the other one to make sure that people have what they need in our community, and that they have access to the services and the support systems that they need. And so then when we back out even further and we go into this kind of a macro lens, when we're looking at it, what we see is that this interconnection is actually a tapestry of all of these things. We have industry connecting with government, industry connecting with citizens, citizens connecting with government and with industry. And this may be an individual resident, this may be a business, a major corporation, this may be a small mom and pop shop, this may be local government, state government, federal government. But when we look at it from this macro lens, we really see this interconnection as a tapestry, and see how many of our daily services and our daily partners are really connected on a business or on a very personal level, and that any impact to our community would really have a ripple effect as it kind of spreads through those interconnected relationships. And so I want to go back and kind of talk about, we've talked about community to an extent. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But how do disasters affect our community in relation to, with our understanding of this whole community impact, right? Well, the first thing is more direct, what we would call direct losses. This is, loss of economic resources. So for every dollar that someone spends on their house repairing it after a storm is a dollar that they're not going to spend at a local restaurant to buy lunch. It's a dollar that they're not going to spend or invest in a company in a stock portfolio for their retirement, right? And it's also an impact to their fiscal health directly as a result of these disasters. But then there's also an environmental impact, right? And so we're here in Hamilton. Hamilton has the world's greatest water, as I'm sure you've heard. They won the award. One of the great resources that we have is not only the Great Miami River, but also the Great Miami Aquifer. And we are drawing from that aquifer, and businesses are drawing from the aquifer, residents are drawing from the aquifer, and the impact that we would see to our communities should that aquifer be damaged or have contamination issues or really any impact to that would be really monumental in a way that we probably can't fathom how long standing those impacts would be. But there's also environmental impacts that are maybe less costly, but even maybe more impactful than some of these impacts to water. So you hear about Superfund sites, so sites where we have extreme contamination, and we have situations where we have tanker truck rollovers. My team and I, we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to go up to East Palestine for the trade derailment, to go up and see the impact that it had on that community. They're still dealing with the impact from that event, right? And if something were to happen like that in Butler County, we certainly have more resources available than a lot of the folks who lived in East Palestine and the first responders that are in East Palestine. But it would still be a substantial, significant impact that would really require us to have a long runway for recovery. But probably one of the things that gets overlooked the most, and again, one of the things I think is probably more important, is the loss of community that we experience. And so people who experience a disaster are more likely to leave that community and go find better situations elsewhere for themselves. And so when we look at events like Katrina, which is this next map that's on the right-hand side, and here's a zoomed in version of this. This is Katrina's diaspora, is what this is called. And each dot that exists on this map is an individual who left New Orleans, Louisiana, after the events of Katrina. And so you'll see folks went as far up as Alaska. They went as far away as Washington, New York, Maine. All throughout the great United States, these individuals identified that whatever they had in New Orleans was lost or was going to take some time to recover, and they made the decision that they were going to move away from that area. And I always ask the question, I think this is probably one of the most poignant maps in emergency management, but I always ask this question, do you think those individuals came back? This tight-knit community in New Orleans, these neighborhoods that existed, do you think these individuals returned to those areas? I'm sure certainly some did. But I know that there's a lot of folks who left New Orleans after Katrina and they never came back. And that impact to that community is devastating. We see it in other ways as well, right? This isn't necessarily just an emergency management issue, but it is something that we can point to specifically in this instance, where we can look at what the impact was to New Orleans. And what you don't see, and what isn't demonstrated on this map, is that every individual who left New Orleans took with them their ability to purchase goods from stores. They took away their property tax, and income tax contributions to the government. And so as the population kind of left this area, we started to see the impact on the bottom lines of the businesses and the governments in those areas. And that can create what we call a cascading failure. And so when we talk about cascading failures, this is kind of what we mean. So we have these impacts to our community. And in this case, we have here, sorry, I got to move my picture here. We have this simulated, what we call a cascading threat sequence. And so it starts with the hazard that we have out front. We have a tornado, and that tornado causes businesses to be closed. That results in a lack of resources and a lack of jobs. Again, we also have homes that are destroyed, and we have citizens that leave. And while we can't end the tornado, we can't keep the tornado from happening, there are things that we can do to stop the cascading impacts and the cascading threats that occur because of the tornadoes. And why that's important is because for every sorry, again, I gotta move my camera. For everything that we do to limit the impact of these hazards, we cancel out the cascading threat sequences that are, again, there to the right of that. And so if we can work hard to keep businesses open after a tornado, or get businesses to open up in a more expedited fashion, then we don't suffer the lack of resources. We don't suffer the lack of jobs that comes from that, right? And while the homes may be destroyed and there may be other impacts in the area, these individuals may actually now be able to stay in the community, because while they did lose their home, maybe they didn't lose their job, or maybe they lost their job but they didn't lose their home, or whatever the case may be. It kind of changes the calculus on how they determine, what is best for their folks and for their families. And so when we talk about resiliency and emergency management, we're really talking about this idea: if we can respond in a timely fashion, if we can limit the impact that these disasters and hazards have on our community, then we can start the process of recovery quicker. And communities that begin to recover quicker after a disaster have better longer term outcomes than those who struggle to be in that recovery phase. And when recovery phase is discussed, we're really talking about two things here. One is that short-term recovery. How do we return to the pre-disaster level of function in our communities? But then the longer term impacts are, how do we maintain this new normal, right? We can't go back to the way we were before the disaster, but we have the opportunity to really write the next chapter of our communities through this long-term recovery. And how do we, as emergency managers, and again, that whole community, how do we come together and support those in need and make sure that our community comes out the other side of this disaster in a better way? And while this all sounds good, and we do a lot of work, in this area, it's really what we're finding is community is probably the more important component of recovery. Certainly more important than most have given it credit for in the past. And so part of the reason why is that this whole community approach that we designed and FEMA kind of has developed over the years, it's really predicated on this idea that government alone is not enough. And so there are gaps that government can't fill. And so we have to rely on our community partners and the community to really help fill those gaps and help when government can't. There's also a community understands when its people are impacted, and often knows who's impacted first and who needs help before first responders get that opportunity. And so think of, we were fortunate we didn't have major impacts from the severe weather that we had yesterday. However, if we had, power outages for extended period of times, those individuals, those neighbors that live next to people who need help, are often the ones that are the real first responders going into those communities and helping those individuals and working with those folks to make sure that they have what they need. And again, filling those gaps when we can't as government. It's also important to know community can help reduce those downstream effects, those cascading effects that we talked about. It can help limit those or reduce those, because having a neighbor who has a ladder and a tube of silicone to go up and patch a damage to a roof, or repair a fence post, or whatever the case may be, doing that after the disaster, but before time has allowed that problem to get worse, can actually reduce the impacts, the felt impacts on those individuals. And then again, the one thing that again probably needs more discussion on in our community is that being a part of a community really helps improve physical and mental health in our community and helps reduce those deaths of despair. And so when we talk about deaths of despair, and certainly Commissioner Bolster's on here, so I don't want to really wade into his area too much, but deaths of despair, we're talking about drug and alcohol abuse, we're talking about suicides, things of that nature. And what we see is that community really does help improve the physical and mental health of our community because we have those support systems that exist. And so I actually want to step one forward, and we'll come back to that slide before. But I think we're really in a situation where we are experiencing a lot of challenges to community driven resiliency, right? And so in America, kind of globally, we are looking at declining participation in these social community groups. We have individuals with limited social capital, so they don't have the time and attention to be a part of these groups. And we're seeing disconnection. And so I have some information here. It's kind of off slide, but I was doing some research before this presentation, and I wanted to bring it up because I think these are things that maybe you've been feeling, but maybe have not known that there was research into it. But for social isolation in our community results annually in $6.7 billion in excess Medicare spending. We also see when we have individuals who are socially isolated, we see lower academic achievement, and we see worse performance at works. And about a half of U.S. adults are experiencing loneliness, and we're seeing higher rates among young adults. Less than 20% of people experiencing loneliness view it as a major problem. So people are experiencing this. There's negative impacts to them. However, only 20% of those people who are experiencing loneliness identify it as a major challenge in their lives. And so when we look at social connection, in 1972, 45% of people agreed with the statement, Americans can reliably trust other Americans. 1972, that number was 45%. In 2016, is down to 30%. The average time an individual would spend alone in 2003 was 285 minutes per day. In 2019, that was up to 309 minutes a day. And in 2020, it was 333 minutes a day. For individuals ages 15 to 24, the time spent in person with friends in 2003 was 60 minutes per day. In 2020, it was 40 minutes per day. The number of people with close friendships, of those that were not reporting loneliness, 90% had equal to or greater than 3 close personal friends. 49% of people, in 1990, 27% of people said they had less than or equal to 3 close personal friends. And we saw an increase of those who were experiencing loneliness of 49% in 2020. When we look at these numbers, one of the major impacts on this is faith organizations. So faith organizations, people who were involved in a faith organization involvement in 1999, 70% of our population was engaged in a faith organization. In 2020, that number dropped to 47%. Faith organizations are important because they serve as a form of community support. They provide meaning and purpose. They create a sense of belonging around shared values and beliefs. And we see a decreased risk-taking behaviors for these groups. And so when we talk about social connection, one of the things, it's important to note is that it talks about really 3 vital components of this, right? One is structure, the number of relationships, the variety of relationships, how frequent you interact with individuals, the function, the degree to which you can rely on others and to help you when you have a need. And then quality, the degree to which your relationships and your interactions with others are positive, they're helpful, they're satisfying. Those are the things that we're looking at. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing, really across the board, but even potentially more so in younger adults, that these impacts are resulting in people who do not have someone that they can call in a time of need. That if someone identified that they had a problem, that they wouldn't know who to call, they wouldn't know how to handle it. A personal example of that, although it's not directly related to social isolation, um, but an example of how having community can be helpful and really impact people, especially when there's a need to be filled. My wife and I, we had a leak in our bathroom, and the insurance covered it, and it wasn't a huge impact to us. We were able to withstand it pretty easily. It's again really no impact. However, one of the things that they required us to do was to use a plumber to come in and reset a toilet. And I'll tell you, I've reset about 400 toilets in the time when my dad was a landlord. Something I've done frequently and done often. I know how to do it. But I unfortunately, because of the insurance claim, had to use a licensed certified plumber. The plumber to reset that toilet charged me $500. That was something that I could have done with $5 at Lowe's, getting a wax ring and resetting the toilet for for my own house, and I had to find a licensed plumber to do it for $500. At the same time, I had a much more substantial plumbing issue. I was able to call my brother, who's a journeyman plumber at this point, and we were able to do probably $10,000 worth of plumbing work for free. Essentially, for me buying him dinner, we were able to make it happen. And so, what we find is you have situations and people in our community who maybe don't have access to a brother who's a plumber or a friend who's a plumber or someone who knows how to make those home repairs. And so then they have to outsource those repairs, and they end up costing significantly more than what someone could do without or with someone that they're socially connected to. And I don't mean to bring this up to disparage plumbers and tradesmen and all that work. It's certainly good work, and certainly there's individuals who need that support. But I think it's important that we identify that some of our folks in some of our communities don't have access to support systems, and because of that, the cost to them is going to be significantly more than what it would be otherwise. So I wanted to go back to the slide. I do see we have someone in chat with a question or someone in chat with a comment. I'm not looking at the chat. Is there any questions?
Jim, Jackie Williams said, as our population ages, there is a lot of isolation with our older citizens.
Absolutely. And we talked about the annual $6.7 billion in excess Medicare spending, due to that social isolation. Kind of cut my teeth in public safety riding the ambulance. And we had a certain number of individuals in our community who were very much socially isolated. And because of that, they would call 911 and get transported to the hospital because it was their only source of interaction. We would spend 20, 30 minutes on scene with these individuals at times, and really tried to and struggled to get them connected to other community programs. So it is a real challenge, and it's something that is causing an impact to your local services as well. So what does community-driven relief looks like? Well, it looks like a lot of things, right? It looks like food pantries. It looks like sharing space. So if we have those extreme temperature swings where we're talking about cold, extreme cold temperatures or extreme hot temperatures, opening up your home to a neighbor and letting them come and sit in your air conditioning or sit in your heat. Temporary housing and shelter. If someone gets displaced from their home for a night because of a water main break or their air conditioner going out or whatever the case may be, do they have someone to reach out to and go to their home so that they can spend a night on their couch instead of getting a hotel? Do they have someone who's able to help them with debris cleanup, that's able to cut down the tree limb that's hanging dangerously, or repair the porch, after it's been hit by a tree after a storm? Is there some light repair work again that we talked about? Patching up a roof so that the damage doesn't increase, or fixing a step or a stair so that someone can get in and out of their house a little bit easier. Is there some childcare service that you have a neighbor that would be willing to watch your kids if you had to go to work and school was closed because of a storm? Do you have shared resources? So, one thing that's not on here is there are some really awesome ways that community-driven relief can be done, and done pretty cost effectively, right? So, are there shared resources that are out there? Do you have a community garden? Do you have services like a library that allow you to get access to the internet, to apply for jobs, to work on GED courses? Is there a place that you can go to get assistance, right? Some program or center where you can go to that has information about assistance programs that are available to help those who are in need, right? Do those shared resources exist in our community? And then again, also that emotional and spiritual support. Is there a way for a place that you can go to where you can meet with people and talk about your challenges that you're facing? You can get that additional emotional, spiritual support that some folks don't have in their lives. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up. This is the tail end of our discussion here. But how do we build more resilient communities? Well, we work on building more resilient communities by building more resilient citizens, more resilient industry, and more resilient government. And so I really like this community resilience framework from the International Consortium of Organizational Resilience that's up here. We build resilient communities by again focusing on that whole community approach. The same way that we manage emergencies is the same way that we build resiliency in our communities. And so when we look at from the individual perspective, there's an importance to being personally prepared for you and your family, right? Preparedness will keep you safe. It helps people be less anxious about disasters, and it also helps you recover better from a disaster. And so, like just in the same way that we talked about, more connected communities recover better from a disaster, more prepared families recover better from disasters. And so if you're talking about personal preparedness, there's really three things, and then another one that we're going to throw in here at the end. But really, we want you to make a plan. We want you to build a kit, and we want you to be informed. And so if you have a plan, you should develop a plan for your family, include common places like your home, your office, your RV, and make sure that your entire family knows what to do. In the event of a fire, where are you going to go? How are you going to exit your home? Where are you going to meet? Do your kids know to go to the neighbor's house to call 911 and to not call 911 from the house when it's on fire? Or do they struggle with that? Do you have individuals in your family who may be challenged from a mobility perspective? Is there a way that you can assist and support them getting them out of their house? Do you have escape ladders on the second floor of your home if that's a challenge that you face because of the layout of your home? And again, I like to tell people this isn't just for your home. It's really all the common places that you go to. If your kids spend time at grandma's, then you need to make sure that they have access to make sure that they understand how they're going to get out of grandma's house if there's a fire. Do you spend time at a campsite or an RV? Where are the safe places for those individuals to go? Your entire family, right? And that makes sense for a fire. But what happens if our disaster isn't a fire, right? It's an earthquake, it's a tornado or whatever. Where are your safe zones located in your house? Where should those individuals go? And how are you communicating that? And then I'll tell you to build a kit, right? So a disaster kit, you can find kits online. And I'll tell you that I'm sure those kits are are fine, but I will tell you there's a premium to be paid if you're buying a pre-made disaster kit. I would encourage you go to ready.gov. There's a list of equipment and supplies that you should keep in your emergency kit. And you can probably take that list to Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart and grab a 5-gallon bucket and walk down the shelves and pick things off of the shelves at Walmart and get a home disaster kit for your home for pennies on the dollar of what you would pay someone to put it together. Um, again, not talking bad about those disaster kits, but there always seems to be a premium for the pre-developed disaster kits. Your kit should include food, water, medications, anything that is necessary for your folks. So if you have pets, make sure you have some extra pet food down there. Any meds for your pets that you need. Also, keep your important documents, your birth certificates, social security cards, insurance information. Keep that in a safe location, a fireproof safe maybe, or somewhere where you know that it's going to be safe in the event of a disaster, and keep that in your home. And again, not only do you put it together, but it's something that you need to kind of review every 6 months or so. I would say go in there and make sure nothing's expired, that the batteries are still good, that your toothpaste hasn't expired, all that stuff. Go through it about every 6 months. And then we tell people to be informed, right? So make sure you are able to receive alerts. So if you have a cell phone and you have not opted out of the wireless emergency alerts on your phone, if you still get the Amber alerts and the alerts of severe weather, that's a really good resource. I would also tell you to use trusted apps. So we don't choose apps that our office doesn't tell you which app you should use, but there are some really great local news agencies in this area who have applications that provide weather alerts and provide information on local conditions. And whatever news station that you prefer, I would encourage you to get their app and have that on your phone and have access to it. We also have outdoor warning sirens kind of placed throughout Butler County. I'm sure you've heard them here in the city of Hamilton. And what I always like to tell people is the outdoor warning sirens are a great value add to our community, but they should not be your first line of knowing when severe weather will impact your community. And so outdoor warning sirens in Butler County are only set off in the event of a tornado warning in Butler County. There's no other reason why they would be set off except for the monthly tests every Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month at noon. A lot of folks say, well, I have an outdoor warning siren near me. I don't need any other way of getting information. That outdoor warning siren tells me what I need to know. And what I would tell you is that outdoor warning sirens are not intended to alert people inside their homes. They're really only designed to let people who are in those outdoor spaces know about impending severe weather. In the event that we have some sort of severe weather that rolls through the community, those outdoor warning sirens, while they sound loud on a calm day, have the ability to really be drowned out by the noise that comes along with that severe weather. And so what we would tell you is that we don't want you relying on outdoor warning sirens within your home. If you do want something, we always recommend a NOAA approved weather radio. You're looking for, again, NOAA approved. This is a Midland radio. It's a very common radio, and it has what is called the same localized alerting. And so what that does is it allows you the opportunity to program it in your specific location. And the National Weather Services uses that same localized alerting to identify your particular area when it's inside of a hazard. And so this is why the National Weather Service's alerting is more granular than it used to be. You'll notice that tornado warnings are much narrower than what they used to be. Severe thunderstorm warnings are really for that specific cell when they used to be for an entire county. And part of it is because they have the ability to localize their alerting through this same technology. And again, you can program it by hazard. So you can choose to be alerted for everything from volcano and tsunami warnings to severe weather and air quality. So it really provides you with a lot of great information in the event of a disaster. And then the final thing that I have to add here for individuals is to be insured. So FEMA grants and loans, they're not designed to rebuild. They're designed to help keep survivors safe. And so I'll zoom in on this chart here in a minute. You'll notice that these insurance payouts, or these FEMA payouts after a disaster were pretty low. So this information goes back to I think 2012 is the most recent, or 2016 is the most recent on this one. But in Superstorm Sandy, almost $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion of FEMA assistance was handed out, but it only averaged $8,000 to those individuals. If you have lost your home, is $8,000 gonna get you in position to improve your condition? No, it's designed again to keep survivors safe. It's not designed to help you rebuild. FEMA flood insurance is another one. If you're impacted by flooding, it's very unlikely that your regular homeowner's policy will cover that. And so having FEMA flood insurance, make sure that you receive, a good amount towards rebuilding your home if you're impacted by a flood. And then I throw Florida, California, and Colorado in here because of the hurricanes in Florida and the wildfires in California and Colorado. We're seeing a lot of insurance companies kind of back out of those markets. And so homeowners are having less choice when it comes to choosing a home insurance policy. And we're seeing some markets get so decimated that states are having to step in as insurers of last resort. And so it's a real challenge. I really, encourage people be insured. I know that not everyone can afford it, but really the thing I will tell you the most is the people who recover the best are the ones who have insurance, who have access, who know their policy, and who have really thought through this idea of, this is the type of insurance coverage I need for the risks that are in my community, and have really taken a proactive stance in getting that insurance. So here's that chart kind of zoomed in for you. I don't know that anybody was having issues reading it, but it's up there if you want to screenshot that. And then the last two things, just because we talked about it, but building more resilient industry. This is more of this discussion is really geared more towards individuals. But I mentioned industry and government, so I want to talk about them here for the last minute or so. But we also need to be proactive in building more resilient industry. Our industry partners need to identify potential hazards. They need to plan for disasters and their impacts, and they need to work to implement and test those plans. Government, we need to invest in our ability to respond to natural man-made disasters. We need to make sure that our first responders have access to the resources and equipment that they need, that we are investing in social infrastructure that supports our residents. We also need to develop plans to ensure that those services remain operational during a disaster, and we need to implement and test those plans. And so, conclusion here at 9:45 to keep us on track. The thing that I can tell you, kind of summation of all this is, it is our responsibility as a whole community to really work in investing in people, investing in community, and investing in preparedness. And I truly believe that as a culture and as a community, we are better when we are planting seeds for trees that we will never know the shade of. And when we invest in social infrastructure and improving our communities and investing in preparedness, we have the opportunity to really make sure that our community if it is to be impacted by a disaster, has the ability to recover and to recover quickly and to recover well. And so thank you again for the opportunity to present to you folks. I think I went a minute over or so, so I apologize for that, but I'm happy to take any questions that you folks may have.
Jim, that was awesome. We do have a few comments and questions in the uh, chat section. So Sherry from Batteries Plus, she said Batteries Plus has emergency preparedness section in their store. They will welcome working with you to educate customers on a plan. They want to stock all items for, what does it say? For readiness and for no electric after the disaster. Please let her know what she needs to stock if you haven't mentioned that already. And then Jackie said, how are first responders trained to assist individuals with mental and cognitive decline issues?
Yeah, so Sherry, first off, we would love to partner with you. We are more than willing to do that. If Dan has my contact information, Jason, if maybe you could help get that to Sherry. My county email is fine. Actually, I don't care if anybody has it. It's jim.bolen@bcohio.gov. We would love to talk with you more about that opportunity. I will tell you, my next week gets kind of hairy with the Voice of America Country Music Fest. It kind of takes all the air out of our sails for 2 weeks, but we'll make it happen. Maybe we can partner in September for Preparedness Month. I think that would be a great segue for that. And then the next question was, how are first responders trained for dealing with individuals with cognitive and mental impairments, right? And I'm probably not phrasing that wrong, so please forgive me if I said it incorrectly. But I will tell you, I've been an EMS instructor since 2008. We do a regular training through the initial instruction program for EMTs in individuals with cognitive and behavioral disorders. And so it is covered. I will tell you that it's not what we spend a majority of the time on, but it is something that is covered in that initial instruction. I will also say that there is a lot of really good groups that are out there that are working to push information to first responders to make sure that they have the resources that they need to deal with folks in those populations. And so I think it was Westchester Fire recently partnered with a group, and I don't know the exact details on it, but that group provided some physical resources for those individuals or for those first responders to provide to their patients if they have an incident that involves someone from that population. So I know that that's going on as well. And I'll also tell you that I think there is probably a gap. It's a challenge when preparing for public safety because we have to be prepared for everything, and we have to be prepared for again that whole community and all components. And so first responders really have to work with those groups to get them into their station to share those resources. And I see Jackie Williams, the Alzheimer's Association, would be willing to assist. And you have my email. I would love to talk with you more about that. And we can connect you with the Butler County EMS Council or the Butler County Fire Chiefs Association and get you access to present to that group and talk about the resources that you have. I think there would be individuals who'd be really interested in that. And then from the emergency management perspective, I know that we partner with, or we do a lot of training on what we would call access and functional needs. So individuals who may need additional assistance or support during a disaster. That is something that we are constantly looking at and constantly trying to get better at. Making sure that when we have emergency shelters or emergency incidents, that we have the ability to make sure we're working towards supporting the entire whole community. I will tell you that is an area where we are constantly improving, but we also have a lot of good resources, National Mass Care Strategy and some other folks, some other organizations that we partner with on a regular basis to make that happen.
And Jim, I was going to ask, would you be able to send me a copy of your presentation I can send to the attendees?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I
What's your
typically,
email?
should I put it in the chat?
Yeah. Yeah.
I typically like to send a recap after each coffee and conversation, connecting the attendees to the presenter. And that would be amazing. And Sherry from Batteries Plus, she asked, is there a community group organization that she could volunteer?
There is. Yeah, we have a certain group, and if you'll forgive me for pulling up my phone here, I want to get you the right email address. But CERT is Community Emergency Response Team, and we have a pretty active group that meets regularly, and that is Butler County CERT at gmail.com. And these folks help us on disasters and incidents, as well as we do a lot of training with them, and anything that we do from an event perspective, we try to engage those folks. So we did the Middletown July 3rd Independence Day Festival and Balloon Fest. We had certain team members that were out there for that group. We've had them on actual incidents, missing persons searches, and things like that. Butler County CERT at gmail.com. And Jerry Reardon is the individual who runs that program for us. He does a great job with that program. And they have their own onboarding. And I would tell you, send them an email and let him know you're interested, and he'll be happy to provide you with any information. And then there's other groups out there. I know the Medical Reserve Corps and Commissioner Bolster may be able to provide more information on that, but Butler County CERT is the group that's underneath of us.
All right. Does anyone have any last minute questions or inquiries? Once again, I'll be sending an email with Jim's email, as well as links to ready.gov, training opportunities, volunteer opportunities, and just a recap of what we've talked about today. So I wanted to let you know of some upcoming things that we have going on at the chamber. I'm pulling up the calendar right now. Jackie Williams said, wonderful information. Jim, thank you. This really was very, very informative. I appreciate you for doing this. So we have got let's see, we have a groundbreaking for Primary Health Solutions Lindenwold Health Center. That's going to be August 6th. We have a ribbon cutting for reputable roofing and remodeling. That's July 30th. All of these you can find on our website, hamilton-ohio.com. We also have a networking leads coming up on August 18th with a Mix It Up on August 19th. So the two back-to-back. Hamilpalooza is going to be August 22nd at Markham Park in Hamilton, Ohio. If you'd like to be a vendor, set up a booth, you can contact Nancy at the chamber. And we have a steak fry coming up at Land of Illusion September 2nd. So you don't want to miss those events. Lots of value, meeting a lot of our contacts there. Jim, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Everyone, thank you for attending. Have a wonderful day.
Great information, Jim. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.